Welcome to Writing the Wrong Way, the podcast for writers who strive to be bold and readers who crave something new. I'm your host, Jonathan Ball. I want to thank you for being here, and I want us to stay in touch. So subscribe to this podcast, then go to writingthewrongway.com and enter your best email to receive the Martian Embassy Missive, my bi-weekly newsletter where I let you know what's happening on Mars, where we're always making big plans. Join the Martians so you don't get left out of the invasion at writingthewrongway.com. And as a special bonus, I'll send you a free book. Speaking of books, my new book is called The National Gallery, and it contains sonnets about Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, elegies lamenting the death of my iPhone, and other strange missives from yours truly, the Poet Laureate of Hell. Visit thenationalgallery.ca to order your signed copy. That's thenationalgallery.ca. So I'm here with Justin Currie, also known as Chasing Artwork, whose work you can see at chasingartwork.com. But do you want to just talk for a little bit, Justin, about how you would describe your artwork or your just style?
So I am, traditionally trained as a graphic designer, and that's kind of where I started off my career. I was always drawing growing up, and I grew up in like a fairly small town of, a village really, La Riviere, and drawing is not really a career option, right? So as I was approaching graduation, I was kind of pushed to find something that you can actually get a job with, and graphic design was the next best thing. I wanted to draw. Couldn't do that, but graphic design was still kind of artsy, and then you could actually get a job with it. And so I enrolled with Red River College for their graphic design program, which is a 2-year program, or 3-year to get an advanced diploma. And you can actually take almost the same course at U of M, but it's 4 years with a 5-year optional. So it's condensed at Red River. And so, I didn't really like graphic design at first. The first year, I think I struggled quite a bit and didn't really like it. But in second year, everything started kind of clicking together, and I started to get a handle on, how to use Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop and InDesign and all those programs. And I started to kind of see the marriage of my illustration and this design training. And that's when the style kind of developed, and that's when everything just kind of started clicking into place. And I started really liking graphic design and kind of getting into it. So when I graduated, I got a work placement through the program at a design firm, and then they hired me full-time after school. And I started doing graphic design by day, and at night I was kind of developing this illustration style based in Adobe Illustrator, which is a program that nobody uses except for graphic designers. Like, it's specifically for graphic design. So I've always thought it had the name doesn't make sense. It's Adobe Illustrator, and no illustrator wants to do illustrations in Adobe Illustrator.
So why did you start illustrating in Adobe Illustrator then?
Because I had to work in it all day, and if I wanted to do anything kind of on the side while I was supposed to be working, I'd have it kind of in the program. So I'd have Adobe Illustrator has this massive canvas. It's incredibly data efficient. Like Photoshop, if you have a 50-inch canvas by 50-inch canvas, it's gonna slow down your computer. Illustrator just defaults to a 200-inch by 200-inch canvas, and then you set your little 8.5 by 11 artboard. That's where you're gonna work. But you always have this massive canvas, so you can have a project in one corner, and another project in another corner, another project in another corner, and when you save it out, it's gonna be maybe 70 megs.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's just...
You could literally be working on your day job stuff here, then in the corner you could just scroll over.
Which is exactly what I was doing. I had had a transformer over in one corner, and then I was working on a branding package in the other corner, and so I could kind of snap back and forth. So it was just I was in it every day, and just got really familiar with the program and started to kind of find all these neat little tricks and techniques, and then just started trying them out with illustration, and things started clicking. And then when I started going to Comic-Cons while I was still working as a graphic designer, it really stood out because nobody had anything like it. So I kind of won the lottery style-wise, just the way things developed. I have a lot of friends who I think are better illustrators, but their styles look like a lot of other styles, whereas mine is this weird offshoot that kind of stands by its own. And that's really helped me out.
It's interesting because just to kind of think about how I teach creative writing, and like one of the things I kind of am always telling students is that it really helps to be developing a style, even if you think it's not very good. Like even if you're doing something, like one of the sort of weird things about, I think, art in general, but when I teach it, I'm always talking about writing, but is that often when you're starting out, you're doing certain things wrong, and you're trying really, really hard to do them right, to do them like other people. But the danger there is that you're going to do everything like another person, and you're not going to have anything unique to you. And weirdly, like what you need is like to salvage a certain amount of things that you're doing wrong, and just double down on those things, because that's going to be your style. That's going to be the thing you're going to do different, and it's going to be both the thing that people hate in your work, or that they love in it. Like it's going to be like, weirdly, I feel like you got to look for that thing that is different enough that it can get a reaction. And I like to say that, like, I like to, my like saying about it is like, you can't be somebody's favorite band unless you're somebody's least favorite band. Like,
right.
Like you really want those reactions, as opposed to just sort of being a.
You don't want to be elevator music. You don't want
to be elevator music. That's good to put it. You guys have talked on your podcast, Justin's podcast, Super Pulp Science. They've talked a couple times about like being at an art show and that idea of the heel pivot, like somebody walking past your table, then they kind of turn and come back.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like you can get that reaction if you're just doing good work. Like not that your work's not good, but like there's that kind of good work of like, it's like professional level work that like, yes, it is good and it can be recognizably, everyone, we can all agree that this is good, but maybe it looks like somebody else's thing. And it can be, there's a career there, but I think that it's almost, it's hard to maybe see sometimes, at least when somebody's starting out, like that certain things that you're doing differently or wrong, quote unquote, are maybe the things that are going to actually, you shouldn't be ironing out. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, like how you, I never, my sort of missing link in this is it's hard sometimes to have good advice about like what things are those things and what things are just like.
I don't know if you can really quantify or figure it out early on. I think it all comes down to the mileage, and you just need to work and work and work, and it kind of just evolves. I don't think it's like a conscious choice. I think you just need to like learn from as many sources as you can and try to emulate as many things that you find inspiring, and eventually kind of your own style presents itself. Like early on, I was really focusing to become like other artists. Like I had like styles that I wanted to be like, but it was always kind of changing. Like I'd be obsessed with this artist for like a good year or two, and then it would change to somebody else and change to somebody else. And then like, I think as soon as I stopped worrying about my style, that's when I started seeing that I had one.
Sure. And now you describe your style often as shattered vector. Can you like talk a little bit about like what you think the kind of qualities of your style are?
So I didn't have a name for it when I first started doing it. It's kind of, the style is based on transparency. So I kind of get almost like a really simplistic silhouette block of, like, let's say I'm doing a character. I'll kind of get like a really rough shape, and then I use the Pathfinder tool, is what it's called in Illustrator, and kind of draw lines through it to kind of to have this kind of overlapping silhouettes. And then I hit Pathfinder, and everywhere the shapes intersect, it cuts it. So I end up with all these kind of broken pieces. And then I set all those to a transparency to like 80% multiply. So anytime they overlap, they're kind of darkening each other. And so it's almost like layered broken glass. And I just pile and pile and pile. And so it's this really fractal style. And that's like the really rough work process. But then as I get a little more into the piece, I compare it to Lego a lot. Like I'll build interesting shape patterns or interesting, I do a lot of robots, so interesting mechanical parts. And then I'll use those over and over and over again. And the great thing about Illustrator that I can't really emulate as well in Photoshop is I'll take a lot of pieces and make it like small and then duplicate it 10 times, and I'll have this like small cluster. Then I'll take one of those pieces and enlarge it 20 times as big, and then use that in like a bigger piece of the composition. And what that does is it saves me time, and it also is feeding off its own shape language. So I'm kind of like ripping parts from over here small and making them big over there, and then twisting them over here. And if you try to do the same thing in Photoshop, eventually you'll run out of resolution. You can't just grab a tiny cluster of shadows on this guy's leg and enlarge them, the size of the full background. It's not going to work. But in Illustrator, I do that all the time.
Now, what appeals to you about the fractal kind of shattered style?
I think it's got this nice kind of chaotic feel. Like it's organic, but it's also, because all the edges and lines are so straight and precise, because it's a design vector program, it's this great juxtaposition of like fluid designs made out of all these broken straight edge pieces.
Sure, and then you've also often have like these like large, small composition juxtapositions as well. So I find like in general like having sharp contrast and juxtapositions work. Do you think that's partly like your kind of interest in those kind of sharper contrasts, or to some degree part of your design training, or is that something you've always been really drawn to?
I think that was definitely the design training. It's definitely a product of the program and the tools I'm using. Because my actual, like my traditional illustration wasn't really looking like that at all.
Really? So you just went in a new direction entirely after?
It was totally a product of experimenting in the program and figuring it out in there. It's, like you give somebody a watercolor painter, you give them oils for the first time, or, something even a little more drastic, give them a computer with Photoshop. Like they're probably not going to they might do the same thing off the bat. They'll try to emulate the same thing, but eventually they're going to figure out a new way of doing things, and it'll look different.
It's interesting because, I too grew up in a village, like a town of about 100 people, like really small. When people think small towns, sometimes they're talking to me and they're talking like 10,000 people, and I always laugh about it. like a real, classified as a village. And like you, it was, there's nobody there who had done even heard of anyone who, they never even met somebody who like had a career in the arts. And so it just didn't seem like a path, like you say, and so on. And then similarly, like when I went to school, I started to I did differently because I went to the University of Manitoba. I started doing an English degree. But one thing I did in that English degree was they taught me about this poet from the prairies called Robert Crouch, and he had a poetic style where he was doing these longer poems, like these long, like book-length poems, but they were very, very fragmented. Like there's these tiny fragments. Like he'd have a page where it was just like excerpts from like an old seed catalog, and then like on another, his most famous poem is called Seed Catalog, and then on another page it'd be like little tiny fragment about like something that happened in his childhood. Another page would be like little tiny fragment.
It's almost like collage.
Yeah, it was very much like he was very much doing like a collage in like text fragments, and to me it just blew my brain open in that the same sort of way where I started to really get drawn to fragments and like things that are constructed are these like textual fragments or little tiny shards where you just are juxtaposing for a reaction. Like something like kind of whatever sweet versus something like stark and disturbing, and kind of just flopping back and forth without and trying to manage an audience's reaction in that respect. So it's curious, but I think like one thing that I find interesting too about your stuff is that I don't see you do too much actual like work in comics, but you've done like some books, like Cassie and Tonka is the one I think of, just because it's sitting. I see a poster for it over there, and it's the first one like where I think became aware of your work was Cassie and Tonk, if I recall correctly. But then also even just on your single image compositions, they're very suggestive of like storytelling. So I wonder if you think, how do you see yourself as a storyteller, and like, what do you think the difference is between, like, I don't know, say telling a story in images versus like just presenting images that don't necessarily have like a story suggestiveness?
I think that just comes from like my favorite type of artwork to look at was always concept art or like an image that wasn't attached to a full story, but you could tell had a story attached to it. Like that world building that you can do with just a single image always really, really fascinated me. Like here is a picture of like a little girl holding an umbrella for like a big robot, like I can, without knowing anything else about what's going on, like my mind starts to build the world around that. And every time I saw an image like that, that was kind of the stuff I was I would gravitate to. And with storytelling as well, the last couple the books that I've done and the ones I'm continuing to doing, I always compare them to the storytelling of like the Pixar shorts. Like I want to do a story that'll make somebody cry or get angry or like fill them with emotions in like a 4-minute segment. Like those are always, I think, my favorite thing to watch is like short sci-fi stories or Pixar short, like that kind of incredibly powerful storytelling done with just a couple scenes. That's the kind of stuff I like and want to do.
So how do you decide, is that the thing you're looking for when you're kind of thinking about different ideas you might have for, you know, an image and then settling on like one to kind of focus on? Is that the kind of thing you're kind of thinking about, like, well, what do I want to know more about the story for? Or is there like some criteria in your head about, like, say you got like 10 ideas, when you're selecting one, like what's the sort of decision maker for you in the sense?
I think it's, you know, like anybody working on books, I've got like 20-ish stories kind of floating around, and just kind of comes down to which one is the clearest in my head and the most excited that I'm going to, the one that excites me most to get started. And I think like a lot in my story, I want to have I want to build a world and then explain like next to nothing about it. I want like the reader
just
to
suggest everything.
Yeah, like characters walking through a desert with like all this, you know, ancient, crazy large machinery. Like I love stuff like that. Like you're never going to know what that huge machine did or how it came to be there or if it's alive or not, but like we're going to walk past it and we're going to make you think about that, but you'll never know. And I've always thought that was better than explaining every single piece about the world. One of my favorite like movies growing up was The Iron Giant. And I remember as a kid, like wanting to know the origin story of like the Iron Giant. And as I became older and started making my other stories, I realized how terrible it would be if they explained where the Iron Giant came from and like his whole backstory. So that kind of stuff is,
it makes it smaller, right? Like I think that's the paradox. Like they think they're making it bigger, but they're making the whole world smaller by getting into like the prequel of it or whatever. Yeah. Rarely do you see it work. I mean, it sometimes will work, but generally I think it's like that weird paradox of like those. I see a lot in horror where it's like you want to know a lot about this mysterious thing, but the more you know about it, the less interesting it is. So
yeah, especially like nowadays with all the expanding universes where they want to just, you know, a property worked for the one movie and now they want to delve into like every single aspect of that movie, and that kind of it doesn't make the world better. It shrinks it down.
Yeah, I think in a weird way.
Yeah.
We just go back to Casting Tonk. So when you started working on that, now that came from an image you had drawn, the one you described, right?
Yeah, that was I was after working at a design agency. Illustration and Comic-Cons kind of became. I was getting more and more freelance and doing better at shows, and I made the transition from graphic design to concept artist and interface designer at a video game company. And that's where like I was kind of doing illustration and like a little bit of design for my full-time job, and then I was picking up a lot of freelance design, and then I was doing all the Comic-Cons. And one day I realized I was making more Comic-Cons than I was at my full-time job. So like it kind of like it hit me like a brick, like I could quit my job and just do that. and nobody had like ever. I just had never crossed my mind. It was like totally just. Why hadn't somebody told me that? Like, if you're making more money on the side, quit your full-time job.
In fact, you're told your whole life you can't do that.
And yeah, that's it. I think like I grew up, like you get a 9 to 5 and like that's, you don't mess with that. You have that 9 to 5 and you try to hold on to it. Like, don't ever get rid of it. So it was like a really hard, like mental pivot to like leave the 9 to 5 to do my own thing. And what I wanted to do, like now that I was starting my own company, like now that chasing artwork was going to be a thing, I wanted to take the step into graphic novels. And so Cassie and Tonk was kind of a story that had been brewing around for a while. And it was almost as much, kind of a pilot project for the new company, but also to prove to myself that I could make a graphic novel. I'd done like a little bit of sequential work before, but I'd never done a full story. So it was kind of just to see if I could do it.
Now, so why did you end up looking for a writer on it? Because I know so many people in that position who they decide to write it themselves, which I think is usually a mistake. But most people do it.
Yeah.
And it can work. But like, what is it that kind of moved you towards actually looking for a writing partner?
I think like I'd been staring at the story. It had just been in my own head for so long. I think part of it was I needed somebody else to weigh in and tell me like what was working and what wasn't. I also chose like Gregory Kamichuk to write the book because he had published a lot of graphic novels before. He was one of the only people that I knew in the city who was doing graphic novels as a serious thing. And even he was just doing it on the side at that point. It wasn't his full-time gig. So it was also kind of to get the advice of like, okay, I know I can make this book and get it printed, but then like I don't know what to do after that, like, publishing options and all that stuff. So I kind of also wanted like some mentorship on how bookmaking is done. And so he wore a couple hats with that, like with the business of it and then the storytelling. And it was also great. Like, I don't think we would have worked on another project if he was like a lot of writers that I've met, but we just had a lot of fun story breaking and playing around with the story and just like, what if this and then that, like the evolution of it was very natural and organic. And I think like we just worked really well as a team and could kind of see where each other was going. It wasn't just like, hey, work on this project, and then he gives me a script and I follow that script. It was very much a back and forth relationship on it. And
you did a follow-up, Rest in Water, as well. And you're also working on a book. I don't know. Have you talked about it on this podcast, Super Help Science? I can't remember now.
Dragon Nanny.
It's not a secret.
No, it's not. Yeah.
So you were also working on this book, Dragon Nanny.
Yes.
That is sort of also in that same world. And you've also done you had another writer, Claire C. Marshall, write a novelization, or not a novelization, but a novel set in the same world.
Yes.
This Silent Guardians world.
We have a universe kind of building, yeah.
Yeah, so where did the idea to come about to write that novel set in the world? And why did you decide to find another writer as opposed to, say, you and Gregory doing it?
I think we knew Claire. We liked Claire. We had seen her work around for years and just got to know her, and it just became an opportunity. And I don't think like Greg really wanted to do a novel like that. I think we were both excited to get like some fresh blood into the universe and see what somebody else could do with it. So it was just kind of an opportunity to expand the business and the story and just the scope of our audience, because she also she appeals to a different audience that Gregory and I do. So it was kind of a need to build that arm and see what it could do.
And have you thought? You're thinking about doing a bunch of stuff in this kind of, I guess you're calling it the Silent Guardians world, more or less.
I think I've figured out that almost all the stories I want to tell have robots in them. So wouldn't it be neat if they're all connected? Like none of them meet at this point, but it's pretty pretty cool to say they all take place in the same universe, and so far that's been working out great.
And when you kind of are looking at working with a writer on some project, whether it's like with Greg co-working on this book, or with Claire, having somebody kind of come into this world that obviously you're going to kind of be weighing in on that story and things and directing it in certain ways, but like you're not co-writing it or necessarily working alongside her the way that you might have worked alongside Gregory, say. But like, what are the kinds of things you're looking for in a writer partner in those respects? Like, what are the sort of things that you found? So with Gregory, you found it very. It was just you were feeding off each other well. Mm-hmm. Is that sort of the thing that's most important to you, or is there something you're looking for in some way?
With Claire, we knew that she was talented and knew what she was doing, so we treated it like how we wanted to be treated on a project. Here are the loose guidelines. Here's like the World Bible. Go to town. Like, do what you do best. Anytime there's been too much hand-holding on a project, I find it stifles it, and so I don't like working that way. And that's why I don't think I would have worked with Gregory if it had been like, here's the script, here's what they say on this page. I don't think I could work as well that way. And so that's what we did with Claire. We just kind of, we gave her loose guidelines and let her do her thing because that's what she does best. And same with like the next project, Dragon Nanny. Greg has kind of been jotting notes, but he's really waiting for me to do my thing, to like start pumping out the pages and tell the story visually. And then once I've kind of done my thing to a degree, that's when he jumps in and starts doing his thing. But for now, it's all in my court for me to have fun with.
So for like the books that you and Greg are doing in that world, you're sort of really trying to let the visuals take the lead on the storytelling. Yeah,
we try to make the entire, I think, especially with Rust and Water, that entire story was, I think, like 95% told visually. And Greg had done like a kind of a pass at the script, but it wasn't until I was pretty much done the book that he came in and really started working on it. And I mean, like, not to say he wasn't working on it. Like, I would bring him over and say, like, check out how this is working. Do we think we need another page here? And like,
and writing against the images.
Yes, yeah. So the images dictated the story, not the writing. Yeah.
It's funny because I'm doing a comic project with Gregory, and one of the initially I'd hired him to just do some concept art. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to pitch the idea off the concept art, and then I wasn't getting anywhere with it, and he's like, why don't you just write text over the concept art? And I actually weirdly, I found I actually just turned the art into comics pages. I didn't even have to change anything.
There you go.
because he had that visual flow to this, he kind of turned it into a story, even though it was, he had originally been working from a script, but it wasn't he didn't really illustrate the script, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it was kind of that kind of Marvel method. It became very much that working off the imagery and letting the imagery take control, which I think is for me it was a bit of a harder thing to learn because I'm so used to just working with this text, and the text is leading the way, but it's a shockingly those images just have so much, it's the cliche is the pictures worth 1,000 words, right? But but the images really do have this incredible amount of power to suggest things beyond the frame. Mm-hmm. And I think that it almost, I think, works best when the text is just juxtaposing it with the imagery and not really trying to replicate it or double function it.
Yeah, you don't need to redundancy where if this image is clearly conveying the message, do we really need it again in a box covering up some of the image?
That's exactly right. And it sounds weird to say it. I mean, it sounds nice and simple, but it's a hard lesson, I think, for a writer to learn.
Especially I think with earlier projects, when I was working from a script, it was always kind of my goal to do a good enough job that words would be taken away, to convey what that text says well enough that they don't need the text anymore. It's always kind of my goal to make the movie WALL-E and have 40 minutes without any dialogue whatsoever and tell that story.
I was thinking while we were talking before about like robots and we were Pixar and so on.
Yeah.
Like it seems like the movie for you.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I was so angry at like all the people complaining about like there's no words in that movie for the first like 45 minutes and people didn't like that. I was like, that's the best part of it.
Yeah, the best part of it. I was disappointed almost when they started talking.
Yeah.
It's still a good movie, but like it does, sort of. I mean, yeah, it's just different. It works so well. I could have watched the whole movie like that for sure. Do you find that it is like how do you see your style and your interest in story, like telling through your style, changing over the as time goes on?
So I think the focus is it's kind of divided between making one-off posters and prints for Comic-Cons and doing storytelling, and I'd like to eventually shift more into the storytelling, but I don't quite have the business model working as well on the storytelling side. So I think like once that starts to catch up more to the poster making business, then then the focus will go to making stories. Like I've got a lot of stories I want to tell, but I find that the one-off posters they're easy and exciting and they make money quickly, whereas the books are kind of the long tail of the comet.
Yeah, books are a real long tail.
Yeah. So the market's always changing. Like my job now didn't exist 10 years ago. Like chasing artwork as a company couldn't be a thing in 2010. But in 2020 we have this, the sea of Comic-Cons is happening right now. And so there's this, whole new way for nerds to pay me money to do my thing. And, who knows what's going to happen in the next couple of years, especially with, publishing and bookmaking. It seems like things are shifting around in that arena, or a lot of mumbling going on about how things work is based off of really old models that don't really work as well as they used to. So I'm kind of excited to see how that changes. And
I feel like the long tail. I was talking to my accountant once, and he was saying something. He was chastising me for putting too much money in retirement savings and not enough in short-term investments. And I was thinking, this is an odd thing for me to say. He goes, but you keep in mind, he goes, you're writing books. He's like, when you retire and are dead, you could easily make more money than you're making now.
Yeah. There you go.
I was like, he's like, that's your business, right? Like, yeah, I guess in a weird way it is my business. Unfortunately, my business model is when I'm dead, I'll be making all this money. But in a weird sort of, I always, but it is like a thing where I think it's interesting to kind of just kind of think about like not wanting to put all your eggs in like one basket or other. You guys have talked a lot on your podcast about like the Comic-Cons and the kind of up and down of just that whole market, and books of course are their own up and down market. Yeah. But if you're at least in like 5 different up and down markets, no matter what's happening, you can be doing
diversify.
It, right? But in a weird sort of way, do you feel like there's a story that you're most attracted to? Like, I mean, of course, like you said robots, but like, outside of like robots in general, like in terms of like what the story is about or the themes, like, is there something you find particularly interesting or attractive?
There are some themes, but I feel like I shouldn't tell all the stories that I want to tell with this certain type of theme, because that's going to wear it out for me.
Sure.
So the next 2 books kind of are along the same vein as like Cassie and Tonk and Rust and Water, but I think after that I should switch gears and do something maybe a little more adult and kind of gory or a horror, just to kind of cleanse my palate of like the kind of the Pixar-esque story that I've been kind of aiming to achieve. I've got like a couple kids books like on the go, like, and it's like a palate cleanser every once in a while to do a book like that. But I am I'm like a little afraid that I'll tell the same kind of story too many times and kind of burn out on that, or my audience will burn out. Like we've heard this story from you and we have them all. Do something different. So I do have some stories that are departure from the stories I've told now, and I'm kind of excited to try those routes out.
Now you guys have been doing a lot of your, putting out a lot of your own books. Have you thought about or been pitching more at all to publishers to take things, or are you not interested in that? Like Gregory does both.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, do you have an interest in doing both or moving in that direction?
I think, eventually that's the way I want to go. Kind of the bit of the business plan that we've got going now, and I haven't been pursuing it too much, but once I have a bit of a catalog of the Silent Guardians, once I have 4 graphic novels kind of with a similar theme set in a similar world with a similar style, I think that would be really appealing for a potential publisher to pick them all up, rather than trying to get, the 5 books that I've done now, finding individual publishers for them all. I'd kind of like to have a cohesive catalog that somebody would pick up.
And when you talk about maybe moving into something more extreme or adult, the horror genre, do you? I think that's interesting because of course you've done horror monsters, you've got an alien over there and stuff, and I could see your style with that very jagged, fractured way, lending itself well to horror. Have you done much tests of that in terms of your illustration, or have you really I don't see any real horror.
There's
pieces
no gore
here.
going on.
We're just in studio right now, but have you explored that a bit, in stuff that maybe you haven't been showing at Comic-Cons, or are you just sort of still trying to think of what a good story to maybe hang your hat on there?
I think probably when I'm thinking horror, maybe more
Pan's Labyrinth, elaborate,
sci-fi horror, almost comic book horror, not as much. I'm trying to think of a good movie to compare it to. Not as much the creepy horror, more sci-fi horror. So the one story that I've got kind of brewing that I think will be, an 18+ book is called While My Bones Burn. And it's about mechs that... So the basic premise is AI has been outlawed because it's... AIs went live and they were basically nukes. If a country had AI, they were so overpowered, it just wasn't fair, and things went bad. So AI has been outlawed. So they have all these machines that they can't have the programming can't make these machines work anymore. So they're taking basically homeless and orphaned kids and lobotomizing them and putting their brains in jars into these mech robots and making them fight wars for them. So there's all these mechs with the minds of childs made to be children's soldiers.
Interesting.
And so then there's the tie-in with, as well, to make them do the horrible things they need to do, they inject their brains with certain kinds of drugs to make things more, So, a lot of... horrible things happen, horrible violence and stuff like that, but it's kind of set in this sci-fi world.
What's the appeal of sci-fi to you in particular?
It was always just my favorite genre.
Do you know why? Have you thought much about why that is? I've thought a lot about my horror interest and what I attracts me to that, and so I'm just curious, what if you've sat and thought too much about it.
I haven't really dissected it. No, I think. Well, also it's given the tools and the style and what I can do best. I can do sci-fi really, really well. I can, especially my robotic designs in my style seem to catch the eye of the consumer more so than most people who do robots in a convention filled with artist drawing sci-fi stuff.
Well, what I like about your style and robots in particular, like I'm just right across from me is a Transformer Optimus Prime with like his arm blown off by a girl holding a Megatron gun there. And what I think is really interesting about your style with robots in particular is it even well, one, it lets you show damage in robots very well.
Yeah,
and like that starts to suggest all sorts of narrative. Like story that has happened to put this damage on this robot, and it lends itself well, I think, in those terms. And then also there's just something cool about like bladed robots, you know what I mean? Like your Gundams in particular, like, that style just works really well with that kind of battle hardened, damaged, but ready, to kill kind of bot,
And too, like looking at the art, like, going through the internet, looking at concept art that appealed to me when I see like a robot that's pristine that looks like it's just out of the box, cool. But when I see one that's half destroyed with like its arm torn off and all these wires going everywhere, then, I want to know the story of how it came to be like that. Like, what did it just go through to sustain that kind of damage, and what's about to happen next?
Now, the last other thing I want to ask you about is this image of yours that I just am obsessed with, which is these 3029 images that you're doing. So you did this, like, you called it an exercise in branding.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about, like, how you developed that set of images and, like, where that kind of just idea came from? Because, again, I find it just a really nice, clear contrast between, like, what the images are these robots in suits, but they're these massive, like, very unhuman heads that like have wires and shards of things coming out of them, but they're all like done up in this very Armani style, like very
dapper suits,
dapper suits, and it's set against a kind of just straight color backdrop with like a logo, as if like a company logo, just says 3029. Either the name of the company or the year or both, and I'm curious to know like where that idea came from for you, and just what draws you to it. Because to me, like as soon as I saw that image, I sat down literally and like wrote a whole like storyline. One of these days I'll take 3029 off it and use it for something else. But it's very, very suggestive, at least to me, like just that instant, like this is a thing. There's some world here. I don't know what it is, but there's some story to these robot suits.
So that was just every once in a while I'll kind of get a little mentally exhausted of drawing whatever I've been drawing for the last little while. That was near the end of the year. I think I was just kind of I'd done a lot of fan art for a lot of Comic-Cons, and I wanted to kind of flex I call it like flexing the fine art muscles. Every once in a while I'll just be driven to do something that has nothing to do with any fandom and just kind of, make something original that's just me. And so it was just kind of, I just need to do that every once in a while. So it was between that and the only thing I really miss about being a graphic designer was branding packages. I really did enjoy doing logos, and I hadn't done a logo in a very long time. So I wanted to do something kind of fine artsy with a logo incorporated with it. So that was kind of my mandate. And then I've always kind of, I think I was just going through some images online, and all this nice fashion photography was showing up of just, the atypical suited up guy carrying his coffee cup, like posing as he waltzed down the street. And I thought, like, I liked the design of the suit, and I thought what I always think, like, what if that was a robot instead of a person? And so I just thought it'd be cool. Let's, put a robot in this super awesome, like this 3-piece suit. It makes no sense whatsoever, but hey, I'll do that, and then I'll make up like a brand to go with it all. So I did 3 different suited up robots with 3 different head designs, and then I came up with a logo. And 3029 was the year. And kind of, I didn't have a story to go with this. I just came up like, I want to see the image of a suited up robot. So as I was making this, I was kind of just spitballing the story in my head. And so what I thought it was is humans have been long dead, but our technology has survived and AI is thriving and doing like it has its own civilization and doing its own thing. And humans have been gone for so long that the AIs don't remember them. They don't talk, like there's no records of humanity because it's just so long ago and it didn't matter. And then along come these AI programs, and they just, for whatever reason, they're fascinated with this once lost culture. And so all they have to go off of is like a couple fashion magazines. Like that's the only like artifacts left of humanity. So they build themselves human bodies and make themselves suits and carry around hot bean water, but they don't understand the why of it. They're just kind of, they have a romance with what once was, but they don't understand anything about it.
I looked at it and thought those 3 robots are actually one robot. There's some guy who like developed like the ability to upload, human consciousness into a robot. He did it by uploading himself into these 3 robots. Then he locked the technology up so nobody else could ever do it.
Okay.
And he became like the corporate king of the world.
Kind of like, is it Surrogate with Bruce Willis? That movie wasn't very good, was it?
I didn't see it, but that idea, but then he's in 3 of them somehow. And so he's, the ultimate multitasking like genius.
So he clones himself and then...
then they start to diverge in opinion and so on as they begin. Yeah. So I just, I spun a whole thing off that. But what would you say, like, just to kind of maybe, end up by going back to one of the earlier things you were talking about, what would you say to the, kid in like a similar position to you and I, who's like in the little village and is like, there's no path. They don't see a path. Like, what do you think what's the path? Like, what do you think is the thing the path's always changing. But what do you think is the thing you wish you knew then, that maybe would have made it easier?
I think like I figured it out pretty early on, and it's the truest piece of advice, like for anything, is it's all about the practice. It's all about the mileage you put into it. Anybody who's good, like really good at something, it's probably because they eat, breathe, and sleep that thing. They didn't just, you don't want to be talented. Talented people, like I think you and Gregory talked about this. Talented people can't deal with failure, and they give up easy, and they don't know how to work hard. You want to you want to have that fire under your butt and just do it for its sake, and eventually things click into place. Eventually you find the place for that. And that was kind of, with me, I was drawing on the side all the time, but I had, like, there weren't Comic-Cons yet. I wasn't going to them. I was like pouring, hours and hours of my time into these illustrations that nobody was looking at online, and I wasn't finding any place to put them like in the real world. And then suddenly I went to a con and people paid me money for them, and it was like, just like click. Oh my God, this is what I've put all these hundreds of hours of work into. This is where it needs to start going. And then my workload just like doubled because I'd found the place for it. And so again, that place didn't exist while I was putting the hundreds of hours of work into this thing. So if you find something that you're really passionate about and, brings you joy, don't worry if there's not a place for it yet. It's probably just that you haven't found it yet, or it's not a thing yet.
Well, thanks. I think that's good advice, and especially because, as you say, like a lot of times I see people that are very discouraged because they don't feel like they have enough talent. And I'm always trying to say to them, like, you're lucky you don't have enough talent, like, because like you say, the talent can get you so far, and then you hit a wall. Yeah. And then, that's fine, but like if you don't know how to get through the wall, it's very difficult. And a lot of times talented people, quote unquote talented people, give up. Like most child prodigies don't continue doing the thing. They burn
out doing the thing, right?
Because they hit a wall, and it's never been hard, and now they don't know what to do, and now it's hard. And it's not fun anymore. And in some ways, if you just early on focus on having fun, and it won't always be fun, but like you can at least learn how to have fun and like make things fun, and like what to and persevere when it's not fun.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think the other thing that you say was interesting is like the whole world just keeps changing, and you know, you can't just, on one hand, you can't be so tied into the thing you're doing that you think you can't do it another way. Like I've seen people who like they made a lot of money on Facebook ads, and then all of a sudden Facebook doesn't work anymore for them that way, and you know, now they don't know what to do. But the reverse is also true. Like you see people who like they just assume there's no path. But like there's always, you know, some path, and it's maybe going to change a bunch, and you got to like on one hand kind of be malleable, and try different things, on the other hand, I think you have to kind of just really be conscious of the fact that there's going to be some problem at some point, and you need to like just kind of have the wherewithal to like see that coming. But also the solution is maybe coming too, and a lot of times, like as you say, like the world just isn't. Maybe the world would catch up with what you're doing in some respects. Like that happens.
And when that boom happens, you know, be ready to, you know, catch it.
Yeah.
Yeah. When that website boom or the YouTube boom or, you know, whatever boom it is, you know, be ready to get in there.
My daughter was looking when she was younger and thinking about high school or university. She was kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to do, like what, you know, job I should train for. I remember saying to her, like, you know, when I went to university, half the jobs that exist now didn't exist. Yeah. Like half the people I know who like got a degree, you included, they're not doing that thing they trained for precisely. You're not, like, you know, you do graphic design, but you're not a graphic designer, you know what I mean?
But like when I was going to school, one of the big things I remember like a big focus was on building Flash intros for sites. Remember when that was a thing? It was like, you need to learn how to do that because this is probably going to be your job. And then, you know, that died out real quick. And even like websites, I always didn't like that the focus
robots are building websites instead.
Well, yeah, there's so many great like templated sites out there. I'm so glad for them because I didn't really ever want to do website design, and thank God I didn't put all my eggs in that basket. And that's what everybody was telling me is like, learn how to do websites because that's where the money is. And I'm glad I didn't do that.
I just think it's like it is one of those things where if you really just focus on developing a skill that's transferable, then you can just transfer it. Yeah. But if you've like decided you're going to do this, there's a path, and I'm going to take that path. It might work out, it might not. Like maybe you end up being phased out by an AI, and maybe you end up having a brilliant career. Yeah. But you know, you're on that path, and like I feel like, you know, it's a dangerous place sometimes to be like on a path that is going one place. Yeah. No, agreed. Well, thanks so much for talking to me. I appreciate it, and we'll let you get back to drawing robots.